Hi, everyone. I know it's been a long day, so thanks for joining us. I'm Remi Delmar. I'm a senior product manager from Epson America. For those of you who may not be familiar with Epson, we actually are in a lot of different types of products. I'm on the commercial side of the business, so we have robotics, we have large format printers, we have projectors for education and other applications, and we also have Moverio AR glasses. I joined the Moverio team about 3 years ago, and I'm really excited to be talking to our panelists today because 3 years ago when I was trying to create internal evangelists to adopt AR glasses, as we are our own best target audience as a large manufacturing company, we ran into some challenges with justifying the ROI and the adaptation of AR glasses. So I'm excited to hear the success stories of our panelists here today, and I hope that you guys will also enjoy the Q&A today. So let me start by having you introducing yourself and your company and your division, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Remi. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Peterson. I work for Cummins. So I guess about Cummins, if you don't know, we're an independent diesel engine manufacturer. We also, I guess, technically the proper term is we manufacture power products. So electric powertrains, batteries, hydrogen, power gen, all that kind of power stuff. So I've worked at Cummins the last 7.5, almost 8 years. I started as a product development, design and development engineer. So mechanical engineering is my trade. And I somehow talked my manager into let me do some of this cool digital tools and innovation stuff. And that's brought us a long way, brought us here, and really excited to talk about that.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vince Herrera. I'm a digital value delivery leader for sales and marketing for Spark Digital within DuPont. So Spark Digital is a center of excellence within DuPont. For those, I'm sure some of you have heard about DuPont. We've been around for 100 plus years. We're essentially a material science innovation company. We manufacture a number of products that are used in everyday types of products. From smartphones, we'll create films, laminates that are used in the semiconductor industry. We create filtration systems used to address water scarcity. And we actually even manufacture products that you might have heard of, like Tyvek, Nomex, Kevlar, that are used in other end products. So with us, I'm part of this team, Spark Digital, which, as I mentioned, is our digital center of excellence. I've been with DuPont about 1.5 years so far, and it's been quite a ride. I'll probably talk a little bit more around Spark Digital, but it's good to have a team that just wakes up every morning and goes to sleep thinking about digital innovation and really partnering with the businesses to really drive that component of enabled value and delivered value. But looking forward to sharing experiences today. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Eric Bursch. I work for Toyota Connected North America. I've worked for Toyota for 20 plus years. I share some common threads with some of the panelists up here. I worked for Cummins Engine Company for 1 year, so I was talking to Andrew about that. I worked in product design for 15 years, so I didn't mention it to Vince, but I, used a lot of the DuPont
Keep it up.
Yeah, materials in our parts. So my role started in 2017 in kind of an XR promotion role in R&D. And I did that for about 4 years and tried to push AR and VR usage to improve our vehicle development efficiency, reduce cost, do it faster, and find more problems before you build the actual vehicle and find the problems and have to pay a lot of costs to fix them. Starting this year, I joined the Immersive Experiences team at TCNA, and I'm working on how Toyota can make a splash in the metaverse, which is something that's only been briefly talked about today, but I'm also still well connected with that entire workflow and work stream in Toyota, and it was part of the reason that I'm in that role today to kind of push us forward. So excited to speak today. Thank you.
So, hi everybody. Name's Elliot Drake. I work for GlaxoSmithKline, working in their R&D department. So, I'm a technical product manager for XR platforms within our APPM group, which is analytical platforms and platform methodologies. So kind of the main areas that I've been focusing on within the past 2 years have been projects mostly working in between like smart glasses or traditional I see what you see kind of use cases. But within the past year, we've been moving into specifically a sterile manufacturing kind of environment. So mostly just working on bringing holographic technologies, mixed reality, things like that into very highly regulated areas. So that way we can do work with like certain areas that need to be held up to like GMP standards and things like that. So been at GSK now for about 2 years. Before that, I was mostly working in like UX and product. So just very happy to be here. And yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for being so generous with your time and teaching me so much during our one-to-one interviews and on our group discussions. Andrew, I'm going to start with you. One of the cool things that you shared with me was that during the pandemic, you guys definitely took advantage of creating kits that were repeatable and you could send to the field service team. Can you talk a little bit about how you got started with that and how you maintained it and how you deployed it and trained the team to start using XR?
Yeah, I think we've heard a lot of people talk, I think, already today about how they set themselves up kind of for success pre-pandemic, and we certainly were we put ourselves in a good situation. So we, I guess, probably like a lot of folks, we saw remote assistance, being able to provide field support without having to actually be on site with our experts and our knowledgeable people as a pretty low-hanging fruit. Lots of value to be had with not a lot of effort or input or investment. So we really went after that. We have, like Remi said, we have kits that we deploy that can be overnighted anywhere in the world that will allow us to basically set up a kind of like a triage network infrastructure so that we can get out there and people from anywhere in the US or around the world can see what's going on with that engine that is having trouble. We can investigate why our technicians were not able to solve it, why they needed more help, and ultimately get our customers kind of back up and running as fast as possible without having to do the, kind of the old legacy way of getting on an airplane or renting a car and driving out there to the site. So we were obviously doing that pre-COVID, and when the pandemic hit and travel restrictions, the group that was traditionally supporting that was built around travel, built around having to travel to go help solve problems. And we saw that travel drop almost to zero when travel restrictions hit, and we were able to still kind of maintain our customer support and get technicians the help they needed. And I think if we think about kind of the topic of the discussion, kind of how we started and how that almost snowballed is kind of like we started small with a couple of kits. We proved out the idea, and then as we were able to show success and have success stories, that allowed us to go petition for a little bit more money and a little bit more money every time to go from 10 kits to 20 kits to now we have just about 600 kits deployed globally, not just in North America. So it's been pretty good. And that success is kind of, it's trickled around the company, and there's a lot of other folks that we're kind of working on solutions in the same space. And there's a lot of new stuff that's happened since that time in 2018 when we first kind of started deploying this stuff. And it's kind of a growing thing within the company. And we have the ARVR XR forum that I lead. And that's kind of just a product of our success, like kind of first off in the company. And, we really try to bring everybody together and share learnings and share knowledge and make sure that we're not working in silos and duplicating effort or anything like that. So it's really a lot of fun. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. And it's just an exciting time. It's awesome to be here and be able to share that.
Yeah, congratulations. So I think I heard in earlier panel discussions this topic of bridging the knowledge gap, the cultural gap, the generational gap, the geographical gap was kind of a constant theme across different talk tracks. Some of the challenges we had at Epson was really getting people trained and kind of overcome and over-measure the KPIs. Can you elaborate on how you may have gone about exploring how to build those kits and how to prepare the team? And was your main area of focus just field service and customer uptime?
yeah, for these kids, it really was focused around being able to support the team. Customer uptime is obviously a number one priority for us. Not having to make a customer wait, for us to come fix their engine for something that we couldn't solve. Like we should have been able to solve it, but we couldn't for whatever reason.
Sure.
So customers don't necessarily like to hear that. So anything that we can do to limit that or minimize that or eliminate it, that's what those kids are after. And there's obviously other stuff around training and stuff that we're doing too that I think we'll touch on in a little bit.
Sure, thank you. Vince, let's talk about Spark Digital as the center of excellence. Seems like the function of your group is beyond just basically deploying, is also creating some sort of evangelism within the organization, which I find super interesting. Can you elaborate a little bit about your work in that area?
Sure. So Spark Digital started in 2018, and we started as a result of what everybody's going through. Digital transformation. We heard comments around machine learning, artificial intelligence, robotics, augmented reality. And the challenge was you couldn't have everybody in an organization become an expert around it. We needed a team that would wake up and go to sleep thinking about this, a team that would just focus on developing these types of innovations. The good thing about it is we're supported at the CIO level. So, my manager reports directly to the CIO. So we get the funding, we get the backing and the support around it. So we're very fortunate in that respect. So, but the key thing is we don't just develop products just to develop it. I mean, we have the capability internally where we have a front end of our factory, which are value delivery leaders like myself. I work on the sales and marketing side. We have other people that work in R&D, other folks that work in supply chain, and others that work in other functions. And what we do is we work closely with the business to try to figure out what exactly are those needs. And then we have a factory side, which is our data scientists, our data engineers. So we can develop solutions internally. And sometimes we'll leverage a third party if we need to. But the nice thing is we almost act as a consulting arm within the organization. So, one of the key things that we always do is we build a large community of practice. So we have about 900 people that we have trained over the last 2-3 years that are waiting to see what new innovations we have around how do we forecast better, how do we develop better pricing optimization, and in this case, augmented reality. So we try to be a bit of that, centralization around that capability, because I would say some of the benefits really lie down to is maybe 3 that I think off the top of my head is, one, you're not alone, or we are not alone. I'm not trying to do the extraterrestrial bit, but one of the things is that we've seen these experiences. We know what doesn't work. We have a lot of people that will create little solutions, but because we've experienced it, we can leverage what we have learned, best practices, and train our teams very quickly. I'd say the second part is around our model. We have a little bit of a try before you buy, where we've bought a number of HoloLenses, RealWear, a lot of other, even some of the work instruction type of solutions out there. So we can have them digest it a little bit as opposed to having to make the investments in some of these areas. But then I'd say the third part is around the value. For us, it's always around value. It's in my title. So when we work with the business, we say, okay, what exactly is your problem? And we spend a lot of time walking through that. What's the solution? What's that value behind it? How are we going to enable a solution? And then what's that delivered value? And then finally, we kind of, highlight that in success stories. So we try to, promote what we have done in every success to the business so more people catch on, more people understand what the importance of this. And it's a little bit of a self-promotion kind of basis model that we do. And it's been working pretty well for us.
Thank you, Vince. I'm going to come back to some of your specific ROI topics on that. Eric, one of the things I found really interesting about what you guys are doing, and also something I run into often as I talk to customers, is that there's a certain amount of confusion between AR, VR, MR. What do I need? Why do I need different solutions? And you guys have deployed both mobile AR, wearable AR, and full VR experiences. Can you elaborate a little bit about how you have scoped it out within your division and what specifically you're doing in those laser-focused applications?
Sure. I think, that question is very broad, but definitely focusing on what people are here to hear about from this panel. Looking at finding problems can actually sometimes be really difficult because a lot of people don't realize they have problems. So you don't always get people coming to you and saying, I have this problem, please solve it. When you do, you kind of like what Vince was explaining, we have them walk us through the current process.
Mm-hmm.
And then we try to consider, okay, what value can we deliver with various technology? Sometimes we go out and seek problems too. And I think, we've been lucky to having a lot of connections in our group to other areas. We've been able to find some of those, and then determining what the ROI is sometimes isn't always quantifiable. So I say that, and I want people to always like not just look at ROI as just like time investment, rental costs, but we looked at a really good example. We've had a lot of success with field of view studies using VR in the cabin. We've been able to find problems like button layout, things like that, or just we're able to do things that you can't replicate. Whether it's like hood field of view, it's like looking back to see a car trailing behind you, or you say you have someone that says, hey, I'm not meeting this check sheet requirement. I'm 0.2 degrees out of the check sheet requirement, which is a 2D requirement. And you're like, why do you have a 2D requirement? And how are you supposed to visualize or actually feel that? Well, VR gives you such a much better way to do it, because you can queue up different models and you can say, okay, here's the current gen model. And you have someone sitting with the VR glasses on. Here's a new gen model. And here's two competitors. How do you feel about the field of view? Not just the number. And you can do that in a safe way in VR, in an instantaneous way, and give the person that's evaluating feedback that they can't get through normal methods. So it's not always just the time savings, the cost savings, but there's additional things that you can grasp. Another thing that we looked at was actually getting better analytical data as well. If you're looking at field of view and obstruction, you can do that dynamically. You can have a vehicle moving, and you can use eye tracking technology to know just how long something's obstructed and what percentage is obstructed, where you can't do that with even with 2D or 3D methods that have been standards in Toyota. So that's always been it's really neat to show ROI and then show a new, better way of doing something.
Thank you. Elliot, you and I talked a little bit over coffee today. For us at Epson, it's been always return on experience versus return on investment. We haven't quite crossed that bridge of being able to fully, in a mathematical way, show the ROI. You've been doing some interesting stuff at GSK in terms of scientific research or justifying the ROI in a different way. Can you elaborate a little bit about what your division does and how you're going about doing that?
Absolutely. So,
thank you.
One of the major things that we were kind of looking at, so whenever I came into GSK, came into the team that I'm in right now, we were previously kind of like in the middle of a full-scale integration with a previous pair of different kind of wearable headset. As we were rolling those out, as we were just kind of going through day-to-day kind of operations with them, we were taking user feedback. We were looking at kind of things that were going on, but we were also at the same time sitting around and saying, hey, what are the recurring things that keep popping up? Where are the major pain points, not only for us as the technical experts for the AR, VR, XR technology, but just even for the folks that are within the lab, the folks that are contractors, folks that are just general operators, where are the things that add up little by little by little by little? And then focusing on just saying, hey, these are the major areas that we have, looking into the market and saying, okay, so based off of this criteria and this specific product fit, how can we integrate a product that not only is going to work, but specifically a product that the scientists and anyone that is using this technology is going to want to use because it just works. Focusing on usability, focusing on actually getting the devices into people's hands, and then making sure that we're keeping it in their hands rather than it just being the shiniest new toy that comes out. So one of the major things that we were really trying to focus on specifically whenever it came to different kinds of areas within the lab was just reductions in errors, or how much time can you reduce a particular new scientist or even an experienced scientist working on a procedure that maybe might take 2 hours and might require calling a certain, like an SME from the other side of the world or anything like that. Any of those specific variables, like that's all time, that's all resources. If there are errors, that is reagents that might only be single use, so that's all money. So focusing on not only saying, hey, these are very specific metrics that we can look at, cool, but then also at the same time saying like, hey, maybe we've already invested XYZ amount of dollars into an XR platform or an XR product or a software service or things like that. But if it's not being used because scientists don't want to use it, doesn't really matter. So just listening, focusing on their individual problem statements, and then looking at the market, finding a best fit, and then taking it, integrating it, and then not only working with that for the users, but being that we're in the R&D organization, we also need to partner with our tech groups. The GSK has a lot of different silos with that kind of stuff, but just making sure that not only we could make it a good fit for the users, but for the people that need to maintain it, or need to own it, or need to handle uptimes, runtimes, updates, hardware, software, any of that kind of stuff. Just
No, you mentioned also that like sometimes people just pivot to old behavior and they start using Teams instead of using, and that doesn't help you with justifying the ROI. But I found it interesting that you're trying to find a workaround to help them still use the tools that they're familiar with, yet do it within the context of the structure that you've put together. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So Teams is specifically within GSK, we're a completely Azure-based environment. So just Teams is kind of the go-to communication tool that we have. So whenever you're in particular lab environments, maybe you can't take your cell phone in, but if you do, that could end up causing a near miss. Maybe you have a smart glasses pair that is available and ready to use, but maybe you just don't feel like using it because it's not the most accessible or like interesting or I guess just even useful product that we have available. We want to make sure that we're saying, hey, these are the tools that you have. These are the tools that you know. Here are ways that you can still do that and still use it while still making sure that you're following rules to a specific standard, whether or not it be just international audit or going into GXP grade. Just making sure that you provide tools and workarounds without just saying, hey, no, you can't do that anymore. Like, there are ways to work around it.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to you and ask, of course, the panel today is about measuring ROI or ROE. Can you elaborate on how you guys go about specifically measuring those things and maybe reporting on those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no shortage of things you can look at for ROI.
Yeah.
I mean, there's hundreds of things, and even just like prepping for this, talking to some of the folks that are running projects right now, asking them how they built business cases and what kind of things they considered. The list is like absolutely gigantic. So I think some of the stuff that is probably worthwhile to bring up. If we think about our situation, our field service use situation, some of the things that we look at measuring is customer downtime saved. So like how much downtime was saved by using one of these on-demand kits or overnight kits. For Cummins, like how much travel did that save us? How much impact essentially does using that kit versus having to go on site? Some of the things also that we look at with that kit is some of our environmental goals, like as a company, are some of the strategies that we're trying to implement to reduce CO2 and stuff like that can be immediately attributed to using a remote assist kit versus having to get on an airplane or drive a car to go help. So that's some of the stuff that we're starting to think about from a field service perspective. Some of the other stuff that we have going on for technician training. So everybody that has a business model that has technicians are super in demand right now, and it's a thing that a lot of people deal with. How do we get people trained? How do we get people the knowledge that they need to perform the job that they're there to do? So we're looking at some training stuff in XR, and when we think about doing that, we think about the time it takes for that technician to travel to go get trained, the week that they have to spend in training doing nothing but training, the retention of that knowledge. How does that affect them later on down the road? Do they retain that knowledge better, or do they perform the job better, and how much more, having done that training in XR versus in person, like on a physical piece of equipment? Looking at how we do both potentially. And then XR, obviously, if you've got that kind of on demand or that training that's available in a headset, you don't have to have somebody that's trained to give the training. That person can go pick up a headset and do the training right then and there when they know in an hour they're going to have to go work on this piece of equipment. So thinking about how that kind of affects things as well. And then from a service operations standpoint, there's how fast can you get procedures done? How fast can you complete a job with AR or XR versus traditional methods, a computer or a piece of paper? Does that allow you to do your job better? Do you do it right the first time more often than not? And how do you kind of reduce dealer warranty or distributor warranty on the work that they've done? There's, like I said, there's a whole lot of things that
really
we look
cool.
at.
I think the one I hadn't thought about was sustainability factor. Epson is big on that, and we have a very aggressive goal. We also kind of went through the same type of journey in terms of measuring door-to-door time for our field service team, but even for pre-sales for big, large equipment, site inspection time, you would have to fly someone to figure out where the electricity would come and all that stuff. So it's nice to hear that you guys have an expanded list. I may have to pay you for that list. And Vince, you mentioned an example of your collaboration with the Singapore semiconductor.
Yeah. So it's always, when you think around extended reality, a lot of these are more internal use cases. How are you improving productivity? How are you leveraging this for maybe, troubleshooting or some of those other aspects? What we try to do here was try to drive this into growth factors. So when we're looking at value, we break it into 3 areas. Projects that are delivering growth, projects that are cost savings, and projects that are going to drive overall productivity. So growth, as we think about top line, are one of the ones that we struggle with. How can we use XR to really help us gain some sales? So I'll highlight a bit of a use case here. So we manufacture metallization products that are used in the semiconductor industry. These products are used to improve the connectivity of some of the semiconductors, printed circuit boards as they're being manufactured. Part of this type of requirement when we're working with a customer, and this customer was in Singapore, was that they need to see how that product reacts within their own operation. Generally, we would have our R&D folks fly in for a large customer, meet with our account manager, have a full presentation and overview of the product, see how it experiences within their own facilities. Given travel restrictions, pandemic, etc., that was not allowed. So we still had an account manager who had a HoloLens that we were able to ship him. And this person's nervous because he's like, I'm a sales guy. I don't play with any of these things. Help me understand how to use it. So we coached him and walked him through it. The key thing was that he was able to go to this facility in Singapore, meet with a customer, and the customer had some reservations because he's like, look, what are you doing with this headset? Are you going to share this with somebody? Like, no, we have to sign a number of NDAs and other aspects there. But the cool thing was that we were able to connect with our remote experts in Hong Kong. So our experts in Hong Kong were able to see what our account manager in Singapore was seeing within a facility. He was able to walk through it and really get a feel for what exactly was happening. That type of comfort factor really resonated well with our customer. The customer was like, this is great. You're very innovative. You're supporting me. So we were able to retain business at an account that had some challenges. We were also able to gain some additional business with some new metallization products for some other production lines that they were thinking about. So it definitely helped in gaining the growth. And then again, with us, we always want to try to equate a value with it. So this is where sometimes a little bit of financial magic comes into play here. But this is where we ended up saying, look, we enabled the sale of this business here, and we had to get sign off here. We had to make sure that the financial person from the business unit, as well as the chief, the regional director of sales was bought in on it, and the general manager. So People were very supportive of this technology. They saw that it really helped win or gain this business, enable, probably a better word here. And it's something that I think was great because now that team in Asia Pacific really looks at this technology as something that they can help, something that can help maybe differentiate yourself with other suppliers out there. So it highlights a little bit of that technical aspects. So again, we sort of weigh in. Sure, you take the travel aspects, but there is some of this other aspect of gaining business because of you've enabled a solution that really helped customer really see how innovative we are.
High value customers.
High value customers, yes, and there's always those challenges that come down to, especially when you're dealing with a commercial team. People will say, "Is this taking my job? Because now I don't need this capability." So there's a lot of communication, a lot of engagement. This tool is more of something that enables you. It doesn't replace you. So, customers don't have a direct line to our R&D. Sales teams are always there and see the value of this technology. It's always a continuous learning event.
Thank you. Eric, is there any specific KPI type things that you want to talk about or any advice for someone who wants to get started, maybe top 2-3 things they should consider within their organization to evangelize and create a KPI perhaps?
Well, on the R&D side, our designers were always overworked and had too much on their plate. So if there's a way that you could show them that you could take some of their workload away, make their job easier, that was always something that helped to really gain traction. So it depends on your audience. It depends on, as someone else was saying on one of the panels, you have to have ground up and top down support. That's very true. The users of the technology have to buy in. We struggled to launch an idea that we had for remote assist because the users just were not happy with the technology at that time and decided to go a different route. So it's not always the specific KPI. It's a lot of times knowing the customer and what they value and getting that support, all-in support.
Elliot, you have 2-3 things you want to provide as an advice for someone to get started. You guys have been deploying.
Let me think. So first off, just getting into the XR industry, it's not really I would like to think that a lot of people here can agree with me on this, but I don't have a solid computer science background. Technically, I have an art degree. So it's one of those kind of places where there's a lot of folks in here that have a lot of very diverse backgrounds. They come into it with unique perspectives. And that is honestly one of the biggest areas of value for that. Just being that we're able to come in with these different perspectives and we know how to build those different bridges between different enterprises, different users, different group silos, even just in between different teams. There's so many places that anyone can get involved with it. And some of the coolest use cases that I've seen have been from people that, again, just even within my team, I'm a tech person, but just seeing some of the things that we get out of folks that work in legal or in facilities or in our lab scientists or just anything like that. They come up with ideas that you'd never even think about just because you are so, well, I say you, I mean, any of us can get very used to the tools that we use. If you only know how to use a hammer, you're probably going to continue using a hammer. Doesn't matter what area you're in, similar thing. 2 or 3 other ideas?
It's okay, we can move on to Andrew and put him in the hot seat for a little bit.
There is one thing though that I did want to share. Just a final KPI though that I'm not sure if anyone else has mentioned or not. Specifically with what we've been doing in R&D, something that has been becoming increasingly visible and incredibly valuable for what we're doing with the XR technology that we're using at the moment. It might not be the value of just if you have a guided work instruction or if you have a procedure or how much money you're saving on paper or travel or efficiency or anything along those lines, single individual expensable materials, reagents, etc. One of the coolest things that we've been able to get is that as we continue working with our XR technology, we've been able to build a bit of a subject matter expertise library. So for example, within GSK, we have a lot of very intelligent scientists that are working on novel products that it's very hard to find people that are specifically qualified to work on, say, in our labs, we're specifically doing a lot of work on like HIV research and prevention and things like that. If there's a PhD individual who's working in our science or who's working in our laboratories, and say they leave, or there's an accident and something happens, or they're not able to be there for any particular reason, or just anything, the fact that now we can actually build a compendium of subject matter expertise knowledge and keep it and have it made available via either photos or videos or audio transcriptions or anything like that, and stream it to any of the sites or countries that we work with around the world, that, like, it's not immediate ROI, but the more you build upon it, it's absolutely indispensable, because people are still people. We can only handle so much, but if you're working in a laboratory and there's only one person in the company that knows how to work a specific piece of machinery, if they go, that's a huge problem. And then what happens to that machine? What happens to the product? What happens to XYZ? So just wanted to share that.
No, thank you. I think some of the common themes that I've heard is the part of the evaluation for everyone here is streamlining workflow. You guys have intensive interviews with cross-functional teams to figure out what they do and what they can do better. There's a bunch of internal evangelism, upper management, and funding requests that happens as a part of that. And then, of course, I heard in an earlier panel, someone said, you can't teach people XR, they have to learn it, is putting devices in the hands of people and making sure they have hands-on experience. And you get some really specific examples of like ROIs that I thought was interesting, that I think, in a simple way, I know there are a lot of different ways, and I am going to buy that list from you, but that maybe just for those who haven't started, they can kind of think about and get their head around it. Can you share this with us? And I think that would wrap up our panel for today.
So you're asking for numbers.
I'm asking for.
I think the thing that we think about and the thing that we push the most is the numbers obviously are important, but what do those numbers mean to our customers? How does the utilization, how does that metric drive customer influence or provide them value? So I think, one of the things that we track as far as, what's kind of fresh in my mind is our field service kits. We save our customers anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 days of downtime every year with those kits, as well as saving Cummins close to $1.5 million in travel costs every year. So if we want to talk numbers, that's kind of what we're seeing with those kits, and we just started going global. So we deployed 200 of those kits globally in the last year, and I would expect those numbers to continue to rise as we kind of saturate the global market. But if you want to kind of equate those days to downtime, we know just from like talking with customers and stuff like that it could be anywhere from $1,000 to upwards of like $15,000, $20,000 a day that we save in downtime.
No, I mean, I intuitively agree that the numbers are just numbers, because it's immeasurable how much adds to customer loyalty. But at the end of the day, I think there needs to be a dashboard for certain organizations or divisions to kind of say, like, this is how we've been successful in investing so much money, which is why I think ROI came up so many times today during different discussion points.
Yeah, I was going to say
it's a real struggle. The struggle is real.
Everybody else this morning took all my talking points. I don't think I think we have some time for Q&A. I don't know if there are any questions from the audience for the panelists.
We have a couple from the app, but if there's any in person,
Getting your 10,000 steps today.
You can do it, Jeff.
Hey guys, I'm JB Forge from Subsea 7. We are the plumbers of the sea in element terms. So quick question. So ROI is interestingly linked to change management. So I guess it's a question for all of you guys. What is the best piece of advice that you can give to the crowd about change management?
Who wants to take this one?
I guess I can start a little bit with the change management aspect, and maybe I'll cite it with an example. Change management, especially in the enterprise, and I'll kind of use DuPont as an example. We're a large company, and we have 3 major business units, and within each business unit, you have 3 lines of business. So that's 9. The challenge is every little line of business is almost like its own independent company, right? And so one thing that works in one business unit, they don't really care. So I'll use one of the examples here, like the work instructions that we're doing. We have a really great use case up in Canada, and I bring it excitingly to our guy in our water division, and I'm like, look, this will work here well. And he's like, have you used it in my business? No, but I mean, it'll work. No, you have to use it in my business in order to really see it. So you have to almost use examples of what you have in other businesses to kind of create those little, beachhead points to get some adoption in there. So I know you had mentioned the question around how do you start or how do you get the value. I think a lot of this is you start small, get at least drill into one particular opportunity, because that'll create a little bit of a domino effect. Again, every business has their own little different corporate cultures, but for us, we have to really demonstrate value in our electronics and industrial business, our water and protection business, because then they get excited. They see it. They're like, oh, okay, if it worked in that plant, which makes XYZ product, and then we can work it there. If it's some total different industry, even within the same business, sometimes they shy away from it. Even though it's all connected at the top, you need to kind of get down to the granular user level and then cascade that message to senior leadership, and they all kind of clap and say, oh, great job. But it's you have to get to the user base at that business level and then cascade that change.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like, from what I recall, you guys also do a show and tell throughout the year.
Oh, yeah.
Where you evangelize what you're doing, you're showing the numbers, and that's kind of ongoing. And
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, part of my role is, it's almost like on a weekly basis, I'm doing a presentation to a business unit, a line of business, a function within that line of business to say, hey, this is the latest technology, here's what we're doing, here's the value associated. So we're constantly evangelizing. We're constantly using our community of practice. I think the cool thing is that we also, when we're working in our group, we create products, and it seems kind of odd, but we make internal products that have internal product launches, internal product roadmaps. So the business units, they start off with it, they're a lighthouse project, but then we cascade that point. So it's a constant presentation, because if you're not speaking about it, people forget. There's too much on their plate.
And that's how you get more ROI too, right? Like if it doesn't get adopted, like, laterally, then things, you really fail.
Yeah.
But it's challenging for sure.
It's like CPR continuously.
Yeah.
You got to keep it pumping.
Sure.
Should we?
There's a couple here. How do you pick one? Is there a resource of known solid numbers to use? It's a little out of context. I'll just go with this one. Is the COVID fear of cross-contamination from sharing devices decreasing, increasing, or flat? Sure. I just was randomly picking. I have another one here.
Go ahead.
So I'm very happy to take that one. So being that during COVID, working in pharmaceuticals, we had to be as absolutely forthright as possible in making sure that everything that we did had to be as sterile as possible. We our travel restrictions were about as high as possible. We couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't do anything. So it gave us a lot of time to really sit down and nail down our product. When it came down to actually using said headsets, whether or not it was a VR headset or whether or not it was Holland or Magic Leap or like any of those kind of things. Sterilizing said headset before moving into another user was always a thing. Moving into sterile environments has provided a completely other level of insight into what that kind of looks like for that. But on one hand, like, it's weird because we've kind of all gotten a little bit more used to taking the masks off, but I think that we have all kind of like, there's a bit of extra respect for just like touching or just like sharing specific objects or things with each other. So like anytime that I have a device that I'm giving to anybody, whether or not it's something that I can sterilize or not, if it's got mesh, if it has foam, if it has whatever or not, usually I had to provide some kind of silicone-based alternative, or I need to have spray wipes, or I need to have like guards with me, because like people will not use it just because even if I'm the one who's doing it all the time, they're still like, not yet, which totally fine. But I'm also realizing that I might be in a bit of a biased area just because working specifically in the pharmaceutical sector, it's a very, very strong, it's just, so.
We can say on the Epson side, when we started deploying the AR glasses to our internal divisions for field service and support, at the beginning, they were used like walkie-talkies. They were shared devices. And then when the pandemic happened, they became personalized devices. So there's that aspect of it too, which I think is going to require managing your charging and your devices and the repair and replacement, kind of like your cell phones as opposed to walkie-talkies.
We use the clean box, so shameless plug for the clean box.
Kind of to that point though, in the beginning, we had like a docking station where it was like, you might have 20, 30, 40 headsets that we would just like, you came in, there was a web portal that we built out, you submitted a thing, you took it out for whatever period of time, you said, okay, these are the groups we're working with, blah, 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 blah. Now it's definitely got to a point where it's like, as you said, it's like each device kind of belongs to one group, one user, like they don't really want to share anymore. So like larger cubbies, but like single individual abilities to sterilize things, or just saying, hey, we're just going to need more devices to give to more groups. That's definitely been a recurring thing for us. So.
Thanks everyone for attending. Thanks panelists.